not to even talk about the terrorist side of things, but it's there and it's available. So you transfer that over to Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is actually even worse, right? Because they've been battling each other and others forever, and so. But I think the notion, in a sense, of Afghanistan and how we pulled out, there was a desperation, right, to end this, right, and people were fatigued. People were fatigued, 10 years before that, but just people didn't want to think about it. They didn't want to pay attention to it. They were done, and the Biden administration, I think, read that as, politically, this is the way to go. This is what we should do. This is beneficial in a sense for us to just, shut the screen door and walk away. And there was no legitimate analysis or thought given to what that meant, right? There was no, it was almost as if they believed this notion that we had to appease the Taliban by sticking to some arbitrary or imaginary timeline. It was the most absurd, ineffective, disgusting, process. There was no, again, I don't know where the leadership went. The idea that there was going to be something stable left behind. We knew that from the Soviet days, right? We knew that the Soviets spent the last 5 years of their occupation trying to get the hell out because they couldn't control it. They made this. Their problems were the same problems we had, and we knew that. And yet we thought somehow we were going to do it better. And so this notion that, we had intelligence and we had assessments talking about, how stable the Afghan army was and how long it might, support a pseudo democratic government. It's absurd. There was just no way. They never bought what we were selling. The Afghan people, they didn't even know what we were selling, So I don't know. It's depressing on one level because I saw again, old enough to have seen the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, and history repeats itself. You just like to think it doesn't do it quite that quickly.
Yeah, one of the most disturbing things for me is people. It would be easy, and I do put responsibility on Biden because he was the person in the seat at the time continuing with that decision. But to think that what happened with our country and first off going there in the first place and then our eventual departure that only rides with Biden. So you're kind of forgetting what happened with Bush and then what happened with Obama and then what happened with Trump. And people oftentimes focus on only the elected official portion of that. I have read now quite a few reports of senior military officers giving their true thoughts when they thought they weren't being recorded or when they thought that their true thoughts weren't being written down. And then the bullshit that they would go spew elsewhere, whether it be in public facing or going before Congress. And nobody is holding those senior military leaders accountable. I can tell you as somebody, I peaked out. My rocket hit an apex at 03. I was a lieutenant at my absolute apex of my military career. And I could have given you a more accurate assessment of the capabilities and abilities of the ANP, Afghan National Police, the ANA, Afghan National Army, and all of the little splinter organizations that we created, propped up, and worked by, with, and through. And for people only listening, I'm using air quotes on that because to truly accomplish the mission that we were doing, on paper, yes, we were doing by, with, and through. Let's just say the tactical execution on target, maybe they were corralled in a different area. Maybe they were just kind of looking over here in this direction. But not a single senior military officer stood up and did the right thing and told the fucking truth and turned in their caller device, and they all knew. If you spent time over there, you understood the realities, and the realities is not what was sold to the American people. It is so fucked, and I wish that more scrutiny was brought on those senior military officers because it's a combination of those things, right? They're the execution wing of our foreign policy. Those are the elected leaders and those at the highest level of the military. And on the other hand, I get it because they leave being a 4-star general and now they work at Boston Dynamics or they work at Harris,
Right.
you know, or not speaking pejoratively about those two companies. Those are just the first two that come to mind. Yeah,
Right.
it's
No, I mean, I think there was and you see again, just kind of looking at how things just always kind of come back around. Whether it was Vietnam or really, any conflict, you get that all the time. You get the, what do they say in private, and what are they then when they get up to the podium? What are they telling the American public? There was no. I remember a conversation. It was, I think it was 2000, maybe it was 2003 or four. So it was a long time ago, right? But I remember talking about Afghanistan with a fellow who was a smart guy, right? He was teaching at a university, had a military background, and older fellow, and I was very skeptical, right? In part because of that experience with the Soviets exiting Afghanistan and what took place afterwards, and then watching all of that, and then seeing what the papers were, saying from the Kremlin. And, we got all that paperwork, right? I mean, we know what the Soviet Union was struggling with, right? And so his point was, no, it'll be different this time. And when you try to drill down and say, well, why is it going to be different? It would be like, well, because we're America, and we have their best interests at heart, and we're bringing democracy, and we're doing all these things. And there was no way to shift him off this position. Like, we were going to stand on the sidelines and throw, chocolate bars and nylons to the adoring crowds as we drove through the villages, and it was all going to be good. And I don't think there was ever a moment during the Afghan conflict in particular where I thought, there's never a chance we're going to create a stable pseudo federal government here. It's never going to happen. And, God bless everyone who wants to do right. I do believe that the U.S. tries for the right reasons, tries to do things right. I mean, there's not a lot of other countries out there of our scope and scale, that would be at the top of the food chain and trying to do things for the betterment of the community. But we make mistakes, and then we try to self-correct at times. But the point was that there was never a moment, I think, where it seemed like it was going to actually work. And so we were just biding our time, looking for a way to get out. And honest to God, I never thought we'd get out in that manner.
I was surprised at the manner that we exited as well, in talking to quite a few friends, same career field that I had. The consensus is, we still have troops in Japan. We still have troops in Korea. We still have troops in a variety of positions throughout Europe. Now, they're not engaged in combat operations necessarily. They're there, and they could, it's smart to have a forward mobilized force. But I think, one, keeping Bagram as a stronghold and a very small, maybe sub 2,000, 1,500 people element there may have been a better call from a long-term perspective than just essentially abandoning that country and telling people, hey, do your best to get to the airport, and maybe we'll have room on an airplane.
Yeah,
for
good
you.
luck. Yeah.
Oh, God.
No, I mean, just if nothing, for no other reason than just operational security, right? Getting rid of Bagram, before you were going to, shut the door and leave was insane, right?
Yeah.
You could do a risk and threat assessment, and you would have seen that in the first day. And it just, that's why I say I'm just confused over where the leadership, not so much even from a strategic perspective, but just from a on the ground operational perspective, saying, no, you cannot do that. If you're dead set on getting the hell out of here right now, and you're just saying that's it, everybody, then you've got to keep, your most secure airfield operational.
Yeah. The most strategic airfield in the region, probably a good idea to keep that in the stable.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I'm not sure how it got missed, but it did. But you're right. And then because it's Washington, D.C., there's never any consequences, whether it's for politicians or anyone else, right? That's why I always find it funny when people talk about, well, they got an investigation going in D.C. up on Capitol Hill. They got starting an investigation. Oh, that's bullshit, right? Washington, D.C. is where all investigations go to die.